Hello, welcome, I'm Hannah, and today we're going to be talking about the Juvia's Place Magic palette that I've had for like 5 or 6 years now. They released a mini one at some point. This is from before then. This is like the full size, I think 36mm pans. And the reason that we're talking about this is because I have an eventual eyeshadow declutter coming up. I planned to do it last year and then I postponed it because I wanted to go through some more of my old palettes and make videos about them. But it's interesting that in my thinking about decluttering my palettes, which I really never like sat down and did, there are some that I've intended to declutter for a long time that I have always kind of like groaned when opening them. And then there's other palettes that have felt kind of like permanent in my collection, but I've been realizing that they feel permanent because I'm holding on to old feelings that aren't necessarily true anymore. And the last time that I genuinely reached for this palette to use it for a look was probably years ago. It was probably pre-pandemic. So I thought we could kind of like break this one down a little bit more, and I did make my own indie single shadow version of this also, which we will compare to and put something on my eyes. I don't know what yet. This palette I was so excited to get when I did get it because YouTube was abuzz with Juvia's Place. I think the thing that people really liked about them was a lot of like YouTube makeup, especially back in like 2016, 2017 era, was super dramatic, super colorful, and it was kind of at odds with the type of makeup that was often being sold to regular consumers that want something brown and blendable and wearable. And I think because Juvia's Place is a Black-owned brand that was designed for skin with a lot of melanin in it, it has a lot of pigment, and people latched onto that. And when I learned that their shadows were vegan, I was like, hell yeah, I was so excited to learn that. And I went on the website and I picked out the one that I liked best, and it was this palette. The thing though with this palette is that I never liked the mattes that much. I remember having like a horrible experience with this super deep purple and this super deep blue, that they had a ton of fallout. I think I tried to like blend them in my crease, which is something that I wouldn't even attempt anymore, but at the time that's what I tried, and it was a mess. It was like one of those things that it falls on your face and nothing you can do short of completely washing your face off will get that fallout off. This shade, which I believe was probably intended to be a highlighting shade for deep skin tones, it really has no use for me. I always would try to use it as a transition, but it's just too light to be a transition. And then I think the color story as a whole is a little bit odd. It has some light and mid-toned warm colors, and then it has some mid and deep tone cool colors. So this isn't really a story that I look and I'm like, oh, I could do that look, I could do that look. So I did treat this as a companion palette for a long time. I used to have the e.l.f. Mad for Matte Jewel Pop, and I remember when I got that, I was like, oh, these are the perfect mattes to go with this. And I was okay using this just for the shimmers, but I think it's important to note when we do the comparisons that this palette was always about the shimmers for me. So if I have shimmers that exceed this, then this doesn't serve its purpose anymore. I remember my favorites were this icy blue and this lavender. Those were both shades that at the time were really difficult for me to find in a vegan formula, so I loved these. I thought they were so intensely metallic. And this shade down here, I always just thought was so unique, and it inspired me to buy a Sydney Gray shadow that I thought was similar, that we will compare it to. And one other note before we get into the comparisons, I have 2 looks that I think of that I had posted on Instagram during the era of this being new in my collection that I just feel like are iconic. Like, I love the looks, but here's what I think I love about them. I think it's good pictures. I think I look good in the pictures, but one of them is a blue look, and I believe the only shadow in here that I used for it was this one. It's possible I deepen it up a little bit with this one. And I can't remember for sure if the blue in my crease is this one at least partially, or if I had used the Mad for Matte palette in it. But either way, I feel like the star of that show is the blue liner. I feel like that's what brings the look together, and if I didn't have the blue liner, it wouldn't look so good. So all that to say, I think the thing with this palette that contributed most to the look is this blue shimmer. And I have other blue shimmers, and I don't have a blue liquid liner like that. So I feel like that would be more on my list, and that would be more conducive to me making that look again than this palette is. The other look that I think of is also a good picture that I like, and I believe the only shadow in here that I used for it is the lavender. I know for sure in that one that I used like a berry and a black from the Mad for Matte palette, which I have since decluttered, by the way. But either way, I have those colors still in my collection, and I have Gorgeous Lavender still in my collection, and nothing prevents me from making that look, and that look does not hinge on this palette. So I think the time has come. I'm going to swatch this palette out on my arm. I'll be able to really feel the shadows with my 2023 indie shadow loving eyes. I also wonder, it's possible the formula is like changed a little bit because it is an older product, but last time I checked, it did seem to be what I remembered it to be. I just don't think it's as good as I expect shadows to be now. I wonder though, that gold feels kind of dry when I pick it up. I wonder if it was always like that. The mattes feel kind of buttery though, but they were never my favorite, and I never found them to be that blendable. That's the entire palette. Yeah, it's funny, I did not feel any magic applying this. All puns aside, I realized halfway through that sentence that it's literally called the magic palette. But just like the feelings that I once felt for it, that like, ooh, these shimmers are so good, I didn't feel it at all while swatching this. How amazing is it that like shadows have improved so much, that shadows that were once incredible to me not that long ago are now like, eh. So here are the indie single shadows that I picked out, and I think I did a really good job picking out shadows. I did try to favor more straightforward shadows since the Magic palette doesn't have any like duochromes or anything. I have some that are kind of like a more sparkly formula, but a lot of them are just like straightforward, shiny colors, and that way we'll really be able to get a sense of what's going on. And I think for me also, in this palette, maybe it's because it's like removed from seeing it as the Magic palette, but it's so clear to me the like weird breakdown of colors. I mean, not every palette has to make cohesive looks. Sometimes the best looks come from odd inspiration, but I just think it's funny that like, if I were to do, you know, some of those neutrals in my crease or something, there's no color in the same family to deepen that up. You'd either have to leave it light or deepen it up with a purple or with a blue, which might just kind of make it a little muddy. So for the gold, I chose Majesty from Divina. The shadow's so pretty. It's one of their less expensive shades. So it's not a duochrome or anything, but it's just like a really solid metallic. It is slightly off in color. The Magic palette one is more golden and this one's more bronzy, but that's okay. I don't need exactly this color, and it's also possible that if I were to painstakingly comb through my entire collection, I would find it, but it's okay. We have Tutu from Menagerie, Pink Lemonade from Luxie, Sweet Cream from Luxie. This one is more of a transition color for me than the Magic palette one is, but I don't have an exact match for the Magic palette because that's not a shade that has any use for me. So this is a shade that actually does. Oh, that's funny. I realized when I was swatching that tan in the Magic palette that it barely showed up at all. And it barely showed up at all so much that I just swatched right over it without even realizing. I'm like, why does this not match up right? That's why. That's funny. This row isn't the best comparatively, but again, it's okay. I don't need to have an exact match for every single color because it's not like I was so obsessed with those colors and I'm keeping it for those colors. You know, like I have the gist of it and I like the colors that I have better. I like that Pink Lemonade works for me as a really pretty inner corner shade, which is something that I don't have in the Magic palette. So it makes it better. I actually have a transition in Sweet Cream and I actually have an inner corner in Pink Lemonade. Luxie Glass Wing. I love this shade. Luxie Blood Moon. Divina Sweetie Sunbeam, and a Depotted Red from the ColourPop Cherry palette. Pretty close. Not exact, but works for me. I realize I should have swatched the Magic palette on that side, so I'm not like reaching over it to swatch this, but you live and you learn. Next I have a row of very straightforward colors. We have Sydney Grace, Totally Worth It, Colored Rain, Blue Magic, Tara Moon's Tiny Dancer, Luxie, Cold Hearted. Very similar in the purple and the lightest blue. The more royal blue is pretty different than this one, but this one has like never been useful for me, and even swatching it, it felt like dried glue. And then this has never been a shadow that I've liked very much either. I actually didn't realize that it was so gray until right now. But I much prefer this like blue that's in between the other blues. Glaminatrix Burlesque, Sydney Grace Keep It Fun, Divina Aquila, Menagerie Breaching. So this is the Sydney Grace one that I bought specifically to be similar to the Magic palette one. And they're actually like remarkably similar. I thought the purple and blue mattes that I had were going to be dramatically lighter than the Magic palette ones, but they're actually not that much lighter. They just like work so much better for me. I mean, they're not shades that I'm reaching for every day anyway, but I would a million times choose these over the Magic palette ones. The Magic palette ones I just avoid. And the green is a lot less green than this one here, but that's okay too. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these more straightforward shades down in my palette aren't shadows that I reach for very often anyway, but they're still like more me than the Magic palette ones are. Don't these all look matte from a distance? Maybe that's an exaggeration, but I feel like here you can see the sparkle better than you can see in the Magic palette side, and I'm all about sparkle. So yeah, I think I'm going to do a look. I think I'm just going to use my palette. I don't think there's any need to like do the comparison because I know that I like Glasswing better than that one and Sweetie Sunbeam better than that one and having an inner corner shade better than that pink. I hope that's okay. I'm just going to stick with my palette and see what I come up with. Okay, I popped on my Anastasia eye primer. I see I still have like red eyeshadow under my eyes from yesterday. So let's ignore that. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this yet, but I want to use a lot of colors and see where it goes. I'm going to start with Luxie Sweet Cream in the crease. I love that shadow. I think it actually might be a little deeper because my brush isn't completely clean. I don't know. But either way, I'm down with it. Yeah, I think this eye is a little deeper than this one because of the brush, but that's okay. Next, I'm going to take Blood Moon from Luxie to deepen it up a little bit. And let's see, I want to pull in some of the deeper shades, the deep cool shades on the outer edge. So perhaps I'm going to go into Glaminatrix Burlesque, which I'm scared about. But it's important to do things that scare you. That's what they say. Okay, just a light application. And I'm like kicking off the excess also before I go in. And also using a pretty small brush to make sure it stays just in the spot that I want it to. Okay, that's not so bad. It looks very like 2016 Sunset Eyes right now. That's funny. I feel like if I really wanted to do that, I would go in with like a deeper red, maybe in like the inner crease, and then extend the purple down a little bit. That would actually be really pretty, but that's just not the vibe I'm going for right now. I'm gonna use Blue Magic. And I'm kind of covering up the purple with that. So I'm gonna make sure I keep the shape. Okay, I'm gonna have that Blue Magic lead me into Sydney Grace Totally Worth It. Those actually went together like really seamlessly. That's the nice thing about working with these like straightforward metallics, like not duochromes and stuff, that like what you see in the pan is what you get. I found that sometimes, you know, it can create really cool looks when I put together colors that have flips, but sometimes it has like unintended consequences. And like the bases don't go together or the flips don't go together or something like that. And it just reminds me of doing my makeup in the past, that like they go together cohesively, like blue into purple. Not rocket science. I am now going to take Glass Wing from Luxie and use that for the inner part of my lid. This is not the type of shadow I usually use on a brush, but I'll try it with the brush at first and then I'll intensify it with my finger if I need to. Oh, that actually picks up pretty damn nicely. That's cute! Wow, that's really cute. I really like this. I'm going to do my base and then we'll come back for the lower lash line and stuff. Okay, base is on and we are going to finish up the eyes. I'm still really digging this eye look. I think I'm going to start by using Luxie Sweet Cream as a transition on my lower lash line as well. And I probably will end up pulling in some of that deepness, but I do want to try out some of the other shimmers down there as well. So let's do Sydney Grace, Keep It Fun. Just to keep it fun. I'm leaving some room for that darkness, but I do want to occupy a lot of the lower lash line with this because I think I'm going to go in... Actually, I don't know which lighter blue, but I don't want the lower lash line to be too light because I don't tend to like the effect of that on my eyes. Cute. Maybe I will take the deeper of the two. I was deciding between Luxie Cold Hearted and Terra Moon's Tiny Dancer, but I think I want to go with the Terra Moon's one. Just a little bit. That's such a nice little gradient. Wow. Yeah, I think even though I love shifty shadows so much, there's still a place in my heart for shimmers like this, because they're just so easy to work with. And they go together so nicely. Like, I think it makes sense that with my super sparkly, shifty shades, I love doing, like, one shadow over the eye. And I've kind of moved away from the type of, like, creative, mixing a million colors look like this. But maybe it's just because of, like, what the eyeshadow suggests. Like, a lot of these shadows, if I just had the one all over my eye, it would be too boring for me. So I like them mixed together, and they mix together really nicely. Okay, I'm gonna take Burlesque from Glaminatrix again, that matte purple, and use that to extend my lower lash line. Really carefully, but I have fallout anyway, great. Good enough. And let's do that on the other eye too. Cute. Okay, and then for my inner corner, we're gonna do Luxie Pink Lemonade. Cute. All right, I'm going to clean up my face and put on the finishing touches, and we'll be right back. This is the finished look. I'll zoom you in a moment. She just needed a hug right now. She wanted to mess up the swatches that are on my arm. If you see cat hair on my face, you'll know why. I decided to pop on my Juvia's Place lipstick, which I've had for several years, but I actually quite like. It's in the shade Me. It's like a nice, comfortable, thin, matte formula. I added in Urban Decay Wild Side liner, which fits in with like teal lower lash lines really well. Oh, there is cat hair. Burlesque is not a shadow I like using on my lower lash line. I felt like there was some like coolness under my eyes that I really, like, I tried to disguise, but I feel like I'm going to have one of those face days where my face looks like sallow, I think is the word, because I couldn't like do everything to clean it up, and I didn't want to completely wipe off that area and then try to like patch it up. But the eye look, I am really enjoying this eye look. I feel like younger me, but not in a bad way. I feel like a broken record, and I feel like I come to the same conclusion every time I compare my indie single shadows to an older palette, but my indie single shadows are just so good. They're so good that I feel like by the time I have a thought in my head that like this palette isn't the best quality, my indie single shadows just like rise up and take over. They're so good. You know, not to mention the fact that like this arrangement doesn't need to stay like it forever, unlike the Juvia's Place, but it's nice even if it's just like for today or for this week that I was able to look at a collection of my single shadows in a different way and create a look with them that I wouldn't have normally, that I guess I could have created with this palette, but I don't think I would have, and I think if I did, I wouldn't like it as much as I like the look with my indie single shadows. So yeah, that's the conclusion. That's the tweet. I hope this was fun to watch. If you enjoy this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and there's always a way more indie single shadow content on the way, and thinking about my collection critically, that type of thing. I hope it inspired you to look at some of your older palettes, pull them out, see if the conclusions that you drew about them years ago still hold true, or if you've evolved since then. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for being here today. Bye.